Hi, it's Merryl Key and this is my mystery school. Have you been using Astro Dice? They're fantastic. They're really cheap to buy on Etsy or Amazon, whatever. They're only about $15. 3 dice. One has the 12 signs. One has the planets, and one has the 12 houses. And you just apply it to your question. So for instance, this has Jupiter in Libra in the 7th house. This question is clearly about relationships. It's about expanding relationships and finding relationships that encourage you, that support you. And in the 7th house, it's also the home sign of Libra. So we've got a match. And from there you can start digging into your own chart, seeing where Libra falls in your chart, what sign the 7th house has, and where Jupiter falls in your chart. I've done a video on all the basics of using Astro Dice, and in that I cover all of the 12 houses, the 12 signs, and all of the planets and the nodes, and what they'd mean in a reading. But in this one, I want to look at some extra tips. One way I've been using these is to choose a signifier. So I'm going to ask my question, how will this date go, my first date with this new person, and shake up the dice and just let one fall out. There's the signifier, Jupiter. Jupiter's a lovely, expansive, buoyant, generous sign. So this is good news for my first date. There's a possibility it can grow into something more. My 2 leftover dice, I'll shake them and let one fall out. It's Cancer. It's the zodiac dice. I'm going to use this dice to describe the action for me to take. So we've got our situation, the action to take. And the action to take is Cancerian. Be a little bit closed, be a little bit protective, but also it's a water sign. So it fits in nicely with this idea of letting the emotions flow, of being nurturing, using my sensitivity, using my psychic ability, and also just putting up a little bit of a crab protection so I don't get swept up in this whole Jupiter explosion thing. Cancer for the action to take might also be decisions around whether I bring this person home, whether I enter their home, or maybe our date is around food and cooking. The last dice I've got, I'm going to use to answer what's the outcome of this, my situation, the action to take, and now the outcome. The 5th house, beautiful. This date will go really well. I can express myself, I can feel safe. This date might involve something around caring for children. Oh, sorry, there you go. Or a sentimental connection. This date might involve some sort of creative event or a common interest. As a quick snapshot, this first date looks pretty good. So how can I take that further? In my own chart, I have Cancer on the cusp of the 2nd house, Jupiter is in the 9th house, and I have Venus and Neptune in my 5th house. So you can see I'm relating this question now to my own birth chart. With my personal chart having Cancer in the 2nd house, this date may also involve something about the way resources are shared. I may be expected to pay, and I may want to pay. It may have been my idea. Cancer is a cardinal sign. I might be the one who's come up with this whole plan. I have Jupiter in my 9th house. And since Jupiter is the signifier of this question, this date has something about distances or travel or foreignness, philosophy, beliefs. There's a little bit of a story there because Jupiter in the 9th house wants to stretch the boundaries, but the action to take is to keep it closer to home. Don't go beyond my reach in this first date. Because I have Venus and Neptune in my 5th house, relating this date to my personal chart, something that would influence my decision to have another date with this person would be how well I felt I could express myself. And with Neptune and Venus, I want to see that there's affection and a sweetness and a connection, a creative connection, if I was to see that this date would go further. Let's try it with a different question. And we'll make it something really practical. Remember, we're just going to let one dice roll out, and that will be the signifier. So, practical question, does my car need a service? Venus, the planet dice has rolled out. So the question is a bit about, do I have the money for a service? And do I love my car enough to warrant a service? The action to take, and I'm just going to use these two dice, let one roll out. Aries. Well, Aries is about cars and movement and metal and machines. So the action to take is to take a lead, be proactive. If I want to give love to my car, it probably wants a service. The next dice we know will be the houses. So this is the result, and it's the 11th house, the house of community. And I would expect if I want to be able to move around in my community and also to support my community, that getting my car serviced is probably a good thing. It's not urgent. If this was Uranus, I'd be saying there's something immediately you need to respond to. If this was the moon, I'd be thinking there might be leaks or a mystery sound, something that's brewing away that will become more trouble later. If this was Mars, I'd be saying yes, get your car serviced. Mars with Aries, perfect match. It's a big fat yes. If I wanted more information, Venus with Aries is not a good mix. Venus is not happy in Aries at all. In the Planetary Dignities, Venus is in her detriment when she's in Aries. And this is another way you can link the astro dice to your question, using the dignities, fall, exaltation, domicile, and detriment. The planetary dignities are a traditional way of looking at astrology, and they use the traditional rulers of astrology. So in this system, you don't see the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And what it means is some planets are really comfortable in some signs. They rule that sign. So for instance, Mars rules Aries. It's really comfortable in Aries. It's its home. It's where Aries can respond in its most natural way without conflict. In this system, that means Mars is in its domicile, its rulership, its home. When a planet is in its detriment, as Venus is in Aries, it means the planet can't express itself well. The energy shrinks or shrivels, it dries up. Venus is lush and sensual and luxurious. And Aries is hard, hot, dry and driven. Super feminine, super masculine. Venus can't stretch herself and be lush and sensual in Aries. She has to be practical and outdoorsy. That's a bit of a clue here for this. If I want to go on a big drive, get outdoorsy and get into the wild adventure, I'll need my car serviced. When a planet is exalted, it's in the place they're considered God. It's a place you'll always like to visit. Venus is exalted in Pisces. Her hometown is Libra and Taurus, but when she's in Pisces, she really shines without feeling any conflict. When a planet's in its full position, it's a place of real challenge. The planet can't express itself in any sort of meaningful way. Everything gets a bit crunched up and distorted. Venus is in her fall in Virgo. She's really challenged by the Virgo need for scrutiny and critical thinking, organisation and exactness. The other thing about planetary dignities, it's an old system with some very clear rationale behind it. But part of that means some planets are called good and benefic, and some planets are called bad and malefic. It might be uncomfortable with that judgment call of good and bad, because every planet expresses itself in a million ways. It's just an energy. But Mars is generally considered malefic, and Saturn, and Venus and Jupiter are considered benefic. There's also a few rules and laws about whether you were born during the day or during the night, in which case if you were born during the day, the sun is a benefic planet for you, and if you were born at night, where's the moon? the moon is your benefic planet. So it's something more to look into and give you another layer of depth with your astro dice. Another trick I've been using is just to use the planets and the signs dice and use this for timing. So if my question is, following on from the last one, I might need to get my car serviced because I might be doing a longer trip. So let's look at the timing of that. If I am to go on a longer car trip, what's the timing of that? We've got the moon and Aquarius. The moon goes into Aquarius once every month, every 27 days. So one thing I'd be looking at, this car trip might be timed for when the moon is in Aquarius. If I want to go further, I'd look at when is a full moon or a new moon in Aquarius. If it's Pluto in Aquarius, because they move so slowly and it might not even be in your lifetime that Pluto would be in Aquarius, what I'd look at then is what does Pluto represent? And if I want to go on this longer car trip, I would have to look at Pluto, which is the planet of death and transformation. And one thing might be, I might be travelling because there's a death, or my travel plans might be inhibited because I've got a Plutonian fear of expanding and getting out socially. If I had Uranus in Aquarius, that's in its home sign. So there's a comfortability about doing this trip spontaneously because Uranus moves very slowly. Once every 84 years is in Aquarius. But the answer to my question, when will I do this car trip? It means there's spontaneity involved. If it's the outer planet Saturn, once in every 28 years or so, Saturn is in Aquarius, so that's not really relevant to my question. But what I'd be looking at is the way Saturn influences a potential trip. And Saturn would say, do you have the money? Can you get time off work? A border's going to be open. They're the things that will govern this trip. If the question was timing, when will I buy my house? Same thing, we'll just use the planet dice and the sign dice. When will I buy my house? We've got Gemini and the South Node. The South Node will only travel in Gemini about once every 19 years. So if that fits your plan, go with that one. But if that feels like a bit of a long-range view and not really relevant, I'd be using the symbolism of the South Node and saying that timing with the nodes could be very soon, it could be very fated, it could involve eclipses, and it could also involve a moving away from. So it's giving us information about moving away from Gemini, moving away from maybe the place we grew up, moving away from brothers and sisters, moving away from a language or a neighbourhood that's familiar to you. The South Node also operates as a malefic aspect. So it casts a bit of a shadow about when will I buy my house. I may not have the resources. My work may change. There's something historically that has to be sorted out before this question can be answered. If I'm looking at buying a house also, I could use the house numbers dice to tell me something about where I'm moving. 5th house. The 5th house is the beautiful house, the house of fun. So something of this house that I might buy, and I'll take it away from the South Node and give it something positive, Mars. So the description of the house, house of fun. It's going to have some quirky, expressive, creative, character kind of aspect to this house. It's not going to be bland or cookie cutter. And because my birth chart has Scorpio on the cusp of the 5th house, I might be looking at buying towards the beach, buying near a body of water, or buying somewhere that feels really safe and protected with a lot of privacy. So I hope you're enjoying having some extra tips with your astro dice and seeing you can use them one at a time for a signifier. There's my signifier, Leo. You can use them to get descriptions. You can use them and read them like a tarot reading, a signifier, action, outcome. Very cool fun. Hope you enjoy, and remember to support my channel with a like, follow, share and subscribe. I'm Merryl Key, And this is my mystery school. If you want to see more of my mystery school stuff, check out my channel or contact me through my website, www.merrylkey.com. Blessed be.